right, we should be fine.
We're all set?
Yep.
Okay, this is the July 6, 2020 meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation, a regular monthly meeting. May we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Rilling,
Here.
Mr. Abrams,
Here.
Ms. Brown, Chairman Camacho,
Here.
Mr. Frayer,
Here.
Mr. Jelleret,
Here.
Mr. Kasimis.
Here.
6 present, you have a quorum.
Okay. So jumping right in, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the June 1st, 2020 regular meeting. Has everyone seen those minutes?
Yes.
Is there any there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Motion's made by Artie. That was
Okay.
Artie made a motion to consider the minute.
Okay.
Are there any additions, changes, deletions to the minute?
One small change on page 1 of the minutes. My last name is spelled incorrectly. It should be ABRAMS, no H.
Okay. Is there anything else? All right. I just saw on page 4, at the bottom of the next to last paragraph, second line, the word tenure is misspelled. That's all. Should be TNURE. That's all I saw. Is there anything else? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved, this Troy.
Yeah, so moved. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion carries. The minutes are approved as amended. Next item is the special appropriations part of the agenda, section A. I guess the police department received some money from the Treasury Department to the tune of $517.60, I believe. So is that pretty much the extent of it?
Yes, periodically the police department does overtime work for federal cases or other jurisdictions, and this will increase the revenue and increase the associated expenditure budget.
Okay, and the revenues were allocated between 2 accounts, I believe?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, it's allocated. There are 2 accounts. One is the revenue account, and the other is the associated expenditure account. They'll both increase.
I got you, makes sense. Okay. Is there a motion to approve that transfer?
So moved.
Do you need it read?
Yes, let's read the resolution.
Fiscal year 2019 to 2020. 1, resolve that a sum not to exceed $517.60 be and the same is hereby transferred to the Police Department Special Services Division from the Treasury Department. The funds will be allocated to revenues account number 101-310-4220 and expenditure account number 013035-5120. Who moved it?
Ed Abrams moved.
Okay, Ed moves to adopt the resolution. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. The resolution is adopted. Transfer agenda, section B. This is a much more extensive transfer and involves the Arts Commission, Operations and Public Works, Recs and Park, and Transportation, Mobility and Parking. Madam Clerk, would you like to read the resolution before we start? Thank you. Is there a resolution? There is no resolution in connection with this. It's just a bunch of transfers, right?
These
Yeah.
are just transfers.
Okay.
Is
Right.
it possible we can get the agenda up on the screen?
It'd be page 9, if that, is that what you want to see, Mir?
Yes, 1 second.
Okay. Larry?
Yes.
The agenda or the items?
Well, the agenda, we'll go through them as we move forward.
Okay.
Generally, we'll have the agenda on the screen and you can scroll up as we go.
Gotcha.
There we are.
So we're,
It's page 9 of the package.
do you want to scroll up to page 9?
Yes, please.
Can you make it larger, please?
Page 9 of the package. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So the first item is the Arts Commission.
You can move it to the left a little, our left, your left.
Yeah, that's
There
perfect.
you go.
Okay. So either Angela or Henry, would you like to fill us in on that transfer?
Would you like me to go through
Sure.
all of them and then approve the,
Yeah,
all
that'd
of
be
them?
great.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The first one is from the Arts Commission department, and this is for an art installation. They're going to put tarps over the Jersey barriers that are in front of the restaurants on Washington Street. They
Okay.
were going to, as part of the arts, public arts program, I think they were going to try to paint those, but talking with DPW, they're not allowed to paint those. The total project will be about $5,000. They need this additional $3,000 transferred so they can cover the cost of that project. Does anyone have any questions about that item?
No.
For the public works transfers, all of these transfers are to fund the COVID accounts because they needed a little over $45,000 to purchase visual message signs. Those are the digital signs that you see on trailers that they can put to give direction to move traffic or if there's a closure. So all of those transfers are to purchase those visual message signs. Recreation and Parks, they need this transfer so they can start their virtual programming for the summer. That's $12,000 for the entire summer. TMP, they had per the union agreement, they have to do a retro wage adjustment for the Assistant Director of Transportation, Mobility, and Parking.
Okay. Are there any questions?
No.
I have a question about the operations and public works transfers. So that totals of $45,394 that will be taken from other accounts to be put into a COVID expense account, or to take care of the signage that you discussed. I'm just curious as to how is it that, or why is it that we have such a surplus a total surplus in these combined accounts at this point in the fiscal year? Is that because of COVID as well, that these accounts weren't used?
Yeah, some of them. Yeah, there are a lot of surpluses because of COVID. I'm not sure about things like the other machinery and equipment. That doesn't seem like it could be related. I can look into that further if you want to see exactly which accounts had a surplus directly related to COVID.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the security systems that is, because that would be security guards that they didn't need.
Right. Yeah, it's just a curiosity, just because it seems like there's a lot of money sitting in accounts that used, or that apparently have not been used.
So Ed, could we save that or the same topic and discuss that a little bit later? Because I had a lot of questions on the surpluses as I looked through the performance reports. There's quite a few, quite a bit.
Okay, we can do that. So are there any other questions in connection with any of these transfers?
I have a quick question. Angela, do you know if they've compared the cost of renting as opposed to purchasing the signs?
I don't, but I can look into that. As far as I know, I didn't have any information about rental costs.
Okay.
Angela,
Um,
Sherry, I have a question. What did you say for the art exhibit with regard to the Jersey barriers? I missed what you said that was going to cover.
Oh, they're doing an art installation. They'll have canvases that DPW.
It's already done.
Oh, it's already done?
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what was that? I didn't follow.
Could I comment about the surpluses and what we're doing with the COVID expenses, just to
Yes.
explain our strategy?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, two aspects. One is aggregating the expenses for reimbursement purposes, and the second is paying for it. So the approach to pay for them is to use whatever budget is available first, and then the differential might be covered by contingency or wherever else. That's what we're doing now. And that's why we have all these budget transfers. The second aspect is we're moving all of these expenses into a COVID-19 expense account so that Angela and Chitsime can pull all these numbers together so that when we make our submissions, and it's primarily to FEMA originally, however, FEMA has a 75% limitation, and some of the expenses they reject anyway. So whatever FEMA does not cover, the state of Connecticut has a new program called CRF, and that's the program in which the CARES Act money that would go to local governments, except all the cities in Connecticut are too small to get the money directly. So the money goes to the state, and the state then distributes it to local communities. So what the state and CRF have asked us to do is submit the monies to FEMA for the initial reimbursement. And then when we are told we didn't get all the money or something didn't qualify, they would then step up and give us the rest. So we're trying to work within our budget systems by year, but at the same time, maximize our reimbursements in these special programs. But that's why we're doing the special transfers. I did not want department heads spending money on COVID without trying to pay for it within their expense budgets. Oh, it's COVID, it'll get covered, let's just spend. So by forcing them to look at their budgets and try to allocate money where they might have had excess, force the discipline of expense control. And so far, almost everybody has been very cooperative, but that's why you're seeing these budget transfers.
I see.
How big is the COVID-19 expense number now as we speak?
Well, Angela, do you want to talk about those numbers?
Yeah, it's just under 1 million. It was originally forecast that it would be about 680,000. And there were additional expenditures like this operations and public works, signage, and additional overtime. So I just gathered everything for FEMA, and it's just under 1 million.
Well,
Great. Thank you.
let me just add, Angela's referring to the city side. We also have the Board of Ed side. And we have paid some of the money that the Board of Ed asked us for, which are COVID related, primarily computers and notebooks and Chromebooks and hotspots for distance learning. And we are working on getting reimbursed for that also. When you add that together, Angela, correct me if I'm wrong, we're north of $3 million.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so I don't want you to think let me put that into another set of buckets. There are losses of revenue and there are unexpected expenditures. FEMA said they're not paying any revenue shortfalls. Secondly, we are getting penalized because we are conservative financially operated. The state has said, if you have budget to pay for things, use up that budget first before we reimburse you. So as you can imagine, it's a juggling act among many different requirements, restrictions, and filling out the forms properly. Again, our goals are very simple. We want to spend money that we have to for COVID, but not more than we need to. We want to pay for it with existing budget first. And then if we have to go into contingency that was budgeted, great. And then third, how do we maximize reimbursement to the city at large, city and Board of Ed, to gain back the shortfall in revenues and the extra COVID expenditures? The difference, the one difference FEMA has explained to us, they're normally used to a physical disaster, a hurricane, an earthquake, something like that. Usually there's a short time period. There's an event, there's a period after 3 to 6 months, then they cut things off. That's it, no more. They understand with COVID, we're in new territory. God forbid, we may have a second wave. We may have other expenditures down the road. So they're not cutting us off. They've asked us to submit these requests quarterly. So we are working with the organization to keep aggregating the numbers. Angela Chitsmay and I are coordinating with our 2 fiscal year budgets, fiscal year 20, fiscal year 21. But once we set up this process, we're going to keep going back to the well to try to get reimbursements as they are available.
Okay. Makes sense. Any other questions? Okay. Should we take each of the items individually, or should we just aggregate them all and just vote on that? It seems to me to be, since there are no questions, easier just to aggregate all of section B, transfers, the Arts Commission, Operations, Public Works, Recreation and Parks, and Transportation, Mobility and Parking, and vote on those transfers as a whole. There's no objection?
No objection.
Okay. So all in favor of the transfers set forth in section B of our agenda, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion carries.
Who made the motion?
I guess there was no motion. No, actually, no. Someone, I think Ed made the motion. Was it you, Ed, or did
That was the prior transfer. We did not make a motion on these.
right, so would you like to make a motion on this one?
I'll make the motion on this one.
Ed makes the motion again. So all in favor of the transfer set forth in section B, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. The transfer items are approved.
Thank you.
Other business? Section C. That would be, is this Oak Hills? Okay, we just lost everyone for a second. So we're on to the Oak Hills financial summary, I guess. Would someone like to speak on that?
Ed, I just have a question for Angela, or just real quick. How's the loan repayments? That we restructured that loan last year and it's supposed to start July 1st. Is that being postponed? Are they moving forward with starting to pay down the loan, or what's the update there?
I haven't heard that there's any update from the original plan. Since it's a percentage of revenue, there will be a delay. So we won't know until August what will be repaid from the revenue that they receive in July. Since it's per round, we get a portion of per round revenue.
And that's on a monthly basis, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you haven't heard anything about, last meeting, Carl said they were going to move forward with their commitments, and you think that's still the case?
As far as I know.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Yeah, could we get, when we get these things, you know, by the time we see them, the numbers are pretty stale. And looking at this, it really doesn't tell us much because they only had just opened. when they gave us only a couple of, maybe 2 weeks that they were in operation. Could we have them give us some forward-looking projections of where they think they're going to go, which would help us, give us a little bit more information and understand what their planning is?
Yeah, I can ask Mark Gardner if he can provide a forecast. And would you like them to come and speak to the board at the next meeting?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to the rest of the board, but I think that, the way this has gone up and down and right now they're doing gangbuster business over there. I'm just curious how they're going to handle some of the obligations they have and get that out of the way and move ahead and see what they're going to be doing to maybe store some money, put something away for a rainy day, so to speak. So it might be useful to have them come and talk to us in general about what the forecasting is, what they think where they think they're going to be when they get into the end of the season and they hit that trough where they have no revenue.
Okay, yeah, I'll talk to Mark.
Could I make a suggestion? It's up to the board, but I have listened to some of these presentations. Sometimes they talk cash basis, sometimes they talk accrual, sometimes they talk an income statement, sometimes they talk a balance sheet.
Exactly.
And it's very isolated. Today, we're going to talk about our debts. Today, we're going to talk about how much cash we have on hand and how much we think. I would suggest that if they did a cash flow projection, as you suggested, James, and it could be a rolling, I don't know, X number of months, and they had both an income statement and a balance sheet so that we could see how the cash flow from the income statement would be able to pay off debts. They mentioned that they have bank debt that they have to pay back and keep quiet for a month or two to satisfy the terms of that loan. It's really helpful to have those projections to make sure that they're socking away the money so they can pay that off. And I find personally that when it's piecemeal, it's very hard to follow.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, that's the feeling I get when I look at these quote financial statements. They don't really make a lot of sense. I mean, I understand what they're telling us, and it always sounds like good news. But then as soon as you start digging into the numbers, you come up with a lot more questions. And that's why I agree with you. Give us a cash flow and tell us where you're going to be in this. And tell us how you plan to get rid of some of that bank debt that you've got, how they also plan to get rid of the or address the existing restaurant debt that's still outstanding. All of those things are important, and I agree with you 100%, Henry.
If everyone agrees, then I can join Angela in speaking to Mark, and we could explain what the board wants.
Yeah, and I think further to what Jane suggested about these numbers being stale, this is the July meeting of the BET, and these numbers are as of the end of May. So, it doesn't seem that difficult to pull these numbers from whatever system they have, and for the next meeting have numbers that are good through at least most of July for the August meeting, so that we can have a closer to the minute view of what's going on, as opposed to having a month earlier, which doesn't really tell us about what happened last month. It's June.
So,
yeah, I agree with you, Ed.
So the historical numbers should be a little bit more current, and if at the same time they could do some rolling forecasts together, that would help the board in assessing where everything is.
Yeah, on a cash flow basis, yes.
Okay, I will make that request.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And beyond that, we're talking about the next item is just the city budget year-to-date budget report.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions on that. I looked through it and clearly the Board of Ed is got about a 20 on one number, it's 23 million, another one, it's 21 million surplus. And the thing that jumps out at me when I look at that, and that's on page, I think it's page 51 is the first one. And then then there's a summary on, or a breakdown on page 50, or on page 85. But it looks like, as I look through the detail, it looks like most of the teachers have a significant, they're only about 85% of budget, which comes to probably the majority of the $21 million that they are showing as a surplus. This is just this on page, I think you just got to go up a little or down a little bit. Yeah. If you look at this, it's a $23 million surplus so far. And, but if we go down to page 51, you see the breakdown. And if you look at each one of the schools, it looks like a lot of teachers have a significant surplus. Is there some reason for that? Were they laid off? Is that why we see that surplus?
No, that's not. And Henry might be able to speak to the accounting better than I can, but I talked to Chitsime Lamb, our comptroller, and it's the way that the teachers are paid for a full year. They're not, they still get paid over the summer. And I can get more of those details, but it's not a real surplus.
Yeah, but the year is over on June, the end of June, right?
In government accounting, the year ends 2 months after the year end. So we can book entries in July and August. And if the services have been rendered and the payments are made, they're included in fiscal year 20, which is why Chitsime closes the books August 31st. And so it could just be the convention, as Angela just said, of we're paying the teachers 12 months a year. And some of those payments haven't been made yet. We're not on an accrual basis, it's a cash flow basis. Our expectations based on discussions with the Board of Ed is that the surplus may come in at $3-4 million. We are watching that all of those are reasonable, customary, and usual expenditures that get made, nothing extraordinary at the end of the year. But there are some bookkeeping reasons why these numbers are a bit inflated. And we feel by the end of the year, where we close things by August 31st, because there's a catch up and there's a timing of when the entries get entered. What we can do is next month, we could have Chitsime join to explain some of the bookkeeping and why this seemingly high surplus will go away by the end of August.
I do know that Tom Hamilton, the Board of Ed CFO, presented to the Board of Ed Finance Committee that he expects a $2.5 million surplus. So he is expecting most of that 23 million to be spent.
Because the other thing, as I look through it, and again, you know, after I get rid of the teachers, there's a couple of, there's probably 10 or 15 items in there where we see zero attached to the expenditures, and there's the full budget is still just sitting there. Things like degree level services, 155,000, unemployment comp, which is, again, this is under is on page 79. Unemployment comp is 209,000, only 8% has been used. It seems like there's a lot, and I buy the idea of the paying the teachers and saying, okay, you know, we'll have to leave the books open until the end of August. But it seems like there's an awful lot of little, you know, it's small things like that first one that we see on the degree level changes, that we even increased it. We added money to that, and And now we still have $155,000 there and nothing's been spent. So I guess there's two questions. First, obviously, is that what are some of these things? And then secondly, do you do an analysis, or does Chitame do an analysis that takes a look and says, okay, let's take a look at all of those zero expenditure items and go back and find out why they were zero expenditure items? I always get the feeling that we've over budgeted. And the one thing that I really am concerned about is that over budgeting. You know, we don't see all of the detail when we go through the budget process. And, you know, if last year they spent on degree level changes, whatever that is, they spent $60,000, and then all of a sudden this year we make it 155,000. You know, I don't know what causes that, why that happens, or I guess that's a credit actually, reducing it by 155,000. I don't know where it went.
James, you're speaking to my frustration, which is I've been told several times that the city grants them a budget. Okay. The Common Council sets the ceiling. You good people at the BET can shift things around line item to line item, but that's it. We do not tell them how they spend their money. Tom always says, you run my books. You pay my bills, you pay my payroll, you run Munis, you have all the numbers. No one on my staff, to my knowledge, analyzes Board of Ed expenditures. It's not our job, and we've been told to back off. So consequently, that's part of the frustration. I would add that the mayor and the superintendent had an agreement as part of this budget process that in this coming year, we are going to retain efficiency experts, operations consultants to look at both sides, the city and the Board of Ed, to see how the monies get spent, to see if there are recommendations for improvement. But if they're running a $21 million surplus now, and at the end of the year, it's $2.5 million, I'm not sure what power I have to do anything about it. And so I don't spend my staff's time analyzing it. I don't know if that's satisfactory, but that's sort of the guidelines I've been given.
I can tell you my understanding, having worked in the school district quite often, and I think somebody spoke to this, that even though the teachers and many of the staff are only 9 months, they can stretch out their pay for the whole year so that they still continue to get paid during the summer. So maybe that's why some of the money's there, because they don't get their full salary in a 9-month period. And also with the degree level changes, sometimes teachers and other staff will take classes during the summer that will increase their earning capabilities. And so sometimes they may do that, you know, once school is out. And so that's what the degree level changes is, because they may be taking classes.
I buy that. I understand that, and I agree with it. Okay, the principle is fine, but what I'm concerned about is that if we have a $2.5 million surplus, if Board of Education is a $2.5 million surplus, we overtaxed our citizens by $2.5 million. That $2.5 million was collected in taxes to pay for something that never happened. And that's something that really upsets me.
But you have to bear in mind, though, that they're able to keep 1% of their surplus, and so that 2.5%, a lot of that, if not, I guess all of it, or at least a good portion of it, they're going to get back to roll. It's going to be rolled back into their budget this time around for the following fiscal year, probably because they have a right to ask for it, and we typically will give it. So it's not. It's going to go back into the Board of Ed budget. So it's really not that kind of a surplus in a way.
Well, it is a surplus though, Ed. I mean, it's $2.5 million more than what they should have used. There's nothing that
it's going to be 2.5.
It just so happens that if they didn't spend it, that doesn't mean that you also get it again next year too. I mean, that's the nonsensical thinking behind, we can't give you any less than what you had last year. I mean, that's crazy.
That's not thinking, that's the law.
Well, it doesn't make it, that doesn't make the right, okay, let's say it is the law, okay? Then that's even more incentive for us to make sure that they don't sandbag our budget and charge our taxpayers more money than they should.
Mhm.
You and I have talked about this a couple of times, I think. And I think
Jim, I agree. Ed, I just want to destroy. I agree with Jim 100%. What's happening is and the city side obviously is very tight, but on the board side, there's these over budgets or these larger budgets than they need go into the mill rate, set the mill rate, and the tax is higher. Once you get whatever their number is, if it's $2 million more, that sets the mill rate and it's higher. I know it gets reimbursed the next year, put back in next year, but it's still setting a higher mill rate by $2 million, which is costing the taxpayers more. I mean, I'd rather be under, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's true. And it does limit our ability to give them, let's say, less or keep them at zero. That's true, because we have that prior year number to work with. That is true. It's a good point.
Well, it's an excellent frustration, though. What recourse do we have? Because after listening to Henry for the last several months, it sounds like as of right now, there's very little recourse we have.
Well, I think the thing to do is to hold firm as we have year to year. The Board of Ed made it seem as if it was really a difficult task to cut the budget, their original request by, 9 million, or so. I can't remember the exact number, but it turns out that they're now going to have a surplus of 2.5 million. So I think we just have to keep their feet to the fire and make sure that we do our part, which is not going to be a foolproof. I think there's always going to be probably a surplus of some sort at the end of the year, which isn't the worst thing in the world. But it would be better if it was a zero, I guess. But that would require, I think, a magic wand that I don't think anyone has to really come at the end of the year to a zero. It's either going to be they're going to come to us for additional monies, or we're going to sort of pretty much come close to what they actually needed.
Oh, can't we hold them at zero? And can't we say, look, it's going to be zero, and then you have to justify to us every percentage point above zero?
I think that's what we tried to do this year. There were certain that were contractual that we couldn't do anything about.
But I think what happens is, it's the same. It's a game that's always played in budgeting circles, that you always come in and ask for twice what you think you're going to get, and then you settle for 50%. Everybody's happy. But I think we start at zero and then say, okay, you explain to me exactly how you're going to get. You need more than zero.
I would just add one more point that I noticed when I went through the budget process this year. When Angela and I sat down with every single department, and then you people sat with them, we looked at 2 or 3 years historical budgets, actuals, and we said for each line item, for each department, why do you need this increase? And some of the people said, we always get this increase. And we said, but you haven't spent it for 3 years. We're cutting it. Okay? We saw an item that looked large 2 years ago, and we averaged what their actual was. And some people very honestly said, that was one time, you can take it out. So on the city side, we had good cooperation, a good tight budget. With the Board of Ed, the one thing I noticed, which was very disconcerting to me, they never discussed last year's budget. Last year's budget was 198 million, and they asked for 18 million more. All they did was they said, here are our programs and objectives for the year. Here are 9 different programs, and here's how we're going to spend the 18 million additional. No one in the process from the city side asks them, how did you spend last year's money? Do you have budget surplus? Did you have money in your budget that you didn't spend, and why? I heard some questions that said there were programs that were initiated, some worked well, some did not. do those monies come out when those programs don't work? There's never a reactive look at the prior year's budget. It's only focused on the future. And I think maybe if you're interested in more control during the budget process, you could ask them to explain budget versus actual for the whole year as a baseline for what they're looking for next year.
My hope and expectation is with the new superintendent coming on board, that she's going to sit down with the department heads and have them explain or justify what their expenses or expenditures have been, to see if those things, if those monies are working, if the programs are working, if they produce results, and perhaps to discuss how better to redirect those dollars, or if those dollars, you know, are needed at all. So my hope is that that is going to be done with this new superintendent.
Do we know, just another aside, do we have any idea of what the impact of the additional students were this year? Remember, we put things in the budget for this coming year to anticipate, in the anticipation that we were going to get tremendous amount of non-English speaking students coming into the school system. Do we have any idea how that turned out?
I haven't heard of anything.
You know, I would recommend that we have Mr. Hamilton and whomever come to or appear at the next meeting, and we should probably forward questions in advance and ask them to provide those answers. Because right now, as you well know, they get a bucket of money and they move that money around and they spend it in different buckets, and it's very hard for us to know exactly where it's going. And the 2.5 million surplus, if that's what's going to be the surplus, I just looked and it looks like it's about a 1.2% of their original budget. And we know that budgeting is not an exact science. You allocate money that you think you're going to need, and you anticipate revenues, and you come up with a budget. So that 1.2%, to me, is kind of convenient in a way, because they're probably going to ask for that 1% carryover. But I know that Henry and I are planning on having a discussion within the next couple of days, probably, I think, Henry, this week we've agreed upon, where we're going to take a look at some of the expenses that were surprising to us in a way, and some of the money that was allocated perhaps in an area that it probably should not have been. So we're going to be taking a look at those things, but I would ask that any board member, any BET member that has some questions, let's get them in writing to Henry, and then we can have Mr. Hamilton appear next month at the beginning of the meeting, or if you want, we can have a special meeting and ask Mr. Hamilton to appear and answer your questions.
You know, it would be nice, Mr. Mayor, if we could also invite the new superintendent to come on.
Oh, absolutely.
Speak to us as well about her vision and how she views this budgeting process. And
I've expressed a few concerns in the conversations I've had with her. I had lunch with her last Wednesday. We'll be having lunch again this Wednesday to go over operations, expenditures, relationships, and certainly going to talk about the efficiency experts that I've committed to look at the city side and the Board of Ed side to see where we can have some efficiencies, where we can have perhaps some job consolidations, share services, and other kinds of things that probably should have been done 20 years ago. But we'll make sure that we get that moving forward.
Okay. Anything else? I think that concludes our agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Is this? I think this will be the first motion to adjourn that you've made in the last couple of years. So okay. Maybe it'll be the new motion to adjourn.
Begging Bob.
Right.
No, that's not true. I think about 6 months ago, I made a motion to adjourn.
Okay. All right. So maybe we'll just kind of rotate that way. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Ed.
all. Stay safe.
Thank you.